I feel like it's absolutely no surprise to see Raulian Paiva move up to the bantamweight division at 135. You talk about the Zalgas Zumagulov fight where he actually weighed in at 129. He got the win, but 29-28, lost the second, in my opinion. And that was a close fight. I thought it could have gone either way, to be honest, especially that third round. But the big thing for me is, he goes from missing weight by almost 3-4 pounds, then misses the Amir Albazi fight. And then the big one that we just recently witnessed was the David Dvorak fight. That was a huge, challenger-esque type of fight for the 125 division, but he ended up getting hospitalized for complications due to his weight cut, and there was a replacement found for him. So for me, with the Rogerio Bontorin loss, the Kai Kara France losses, it's like he didn't really make a huge name for himself against the big names, and then it's just he kind of fell to the back burner after the fact with some of his issues against the Amir Albazi fight, the David Dvorak fight. But now he gets Kyler Phillips at 135. What, off the bat, I mean, I understand the fighter moving up to 135, but I can pretty much guarantee that Kyler Phillips would find it troublesome to go down to 125. You look at the way he looks at 135. You look at him in that Yadong Song fight. I wouldn't be surprised if he was actually 15 pounds heavier than that, pushing him to that 150 mark. He's pretty muscular, and he's got good length. And that's what makes him so dangerous in this fight. I think he's going to have a significant size and strength advantage despite only having an inch reach and not much in height. Nothing at all. I think they're both about 5'8". But what makes this so interesting to me is actually just the idea of Paiva moving up to fight a guy who pretty much is coming in at 145, 150 minimum. And, I think Paiva is going to look a lot smaller in this fight, even with both guys kind of maintaining the same height. Kyler Phillips fights big. He looks big. Both guys love the head kick. I think that Paiva likes to throw it from the left, whereas, you look at the way Kyler Phillips was throwing that right head kick up against Yadong Song. I mean, the sound that we heard around the world in that fight, just some really good technical skill. That's where I think Paiva is going to be able to put up a fight. I think he's going to have great speed. I think that his hands do work. My biggest issue with him is that I feel like he's a great first round fighter, then kind of fades later in the fights. And all in all, that could very much well have to do with the 125 weight cut. But now he's just taking on a guy who's not only going to have the cardio for days, but throws with intent and is very technical with his strikes. He's not looping. He's not wild. He's pinpoint accurate. And I think that 10% difference in just striking is going to be a huge deciding factor, right? With Paiva only, defending 51% of strikes, with Kyler Phillips pushing that 60% and up. For me, those are the areas where I think that we haven't really seen Paiva do well past the, I'm not going to say do well. We haven't seen him take over fights after the first round, especially at 125. You talk about the Bontorin fight, losing it via cut. That was a fight where, a strong, good wrestler and grappler was able to have his way with him a bit and also do damage as a striker. So I'm really concerned for Paiva in this fight because I just think that he was the long and lanky style striker with good BJJ as a flyweight. But now we're kind of seeing like, okay, if we give him the speed factor for just being that smaller guy who's used to smaller fighters, sure, that's a great feat for him. But in this fight, in terms of paths to victory, think about the areas we saw Kyler Phillips find success against Yadong Song. This is going to be a tough fight for Paiva. I think that the grappling exchanges won't go well from him from a strength perspective. He might have the technical ability, and he has so much experience with 22 plus wins at his age. But for me, I just think the size factor here and the bantamweight factor could be a bit of an issue. My most exciting and potential aspect of this fight is to hope that Paiva can go strong for 3 rounds. I think that these two guys going to town for 3 rounds is an easy pick for fight of the night. But again, the combos that Kyler throws, his ability to kind of defend the takedowns and work in some of his own. Both guys have tremendously good takedown defense. But for me, when you're moving up to bantamweight, I'm not going to say that all these stats become a wash, but from a power perspective, from a strength perspective. So now we're talking about takedowns and clinch work. It's a bit of a different beast. And now he's got to go into a fight at 135 against a guy like Kyler Phillips. He's not taking on some newcomer. He's taking on one of the highest rated prospects coming into the UFC right now, and who's been 2-0 with the amazing win over Cameron Else, and then a very surprising win against Yadong Song, I'd say. I think Song was coming in as a big name coming out of Team Alpha Male. Uriah Faber was in his corner. He just spoiled the party, in my opinion. I think this is another party that Kyler Phillips can not only spoil, but make his own. It's just in all the areas where you would want a lengthy fighter in in the upper weight class, now having success in those areas, it just makes it very tough to see any paths to victory for Raulian Paiva outside of utilizing the speed. In and out, in and out, in and out. Quick 1-2s. Don't get caught by big head kicks or big takedowns. Attack the legs. Use those leg kicks, man. Tire him out, make him less powerful, and then start to do damage on points if you're not able to finish the fight. That's the one thing with Paiva that makes me concerned, is a lot of his fights are the back and forth style, and now he's going up against a guy who fights really long, has great strikes, and should be able to scramble pretty well with them. So when we're talking about lines, I mean, if Kyler Phillips isn't about a -200 favorite here, I'd be very surprised. I think Paiva has a lot of adversity to overcome, and I'm not just talking about the octagon itself, but being in that, limelight of the 125 division, how everything went for him. It's just a lot to overcome and then get set up for a guy like Kyler Phillips. And so I think it's going to be an incredibly fun fight. I do have to give Kyler Phillips a line of about -200. I refuse to believe that he should be anything, significantly lower. And I don't think he deserves to be anything much, much higher, because Paiva does have great skill on the feet, and he should be able to scramble pretty well given his speed factor and just, skills in general. So let's take a look. I think it's going to be pretty close, at least. Yeah, I mean, there you go. I knew I was going to be pretty close with that line. -250 was the opener, and Kyler Phillips is now starting to see -275s and -290s in specific areas across the board. On average, it's about a -250, so that lines up with where I was kind of thinking. It's just I did not think he should be a -300 or 400 favorite here. He just hasn't shown us anything to merit that against the guy who fought pretty much some of the best 125ers on the planet. But now he has a significant advantage going to this fight, given a guy's going from 125 who struggled significantly to make 135. So in terms of walk around weight and going into the octagon weight, it's just really hard for me to see, Paiva looking as big and as thick and strong as Kyler Phillips should. But again, the speed factor is the biggest key here. And honestly, these are my favorite fights. And it's why I think I've fallen in love with the 125 to the 145 divisions, because frankly, we're starting to see pure athletes come into this game, and it's changing everything.